Ships or Shipsy? Only you can decide. Find out more at shipzorz.com. Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, and it's a little colder here in Toronto. I hope you guys are still getting weather. 6 degrees last night was a little too cold for September, but that's enough about the weather. Let's talk about what is happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain this week. So this week's episode, we've got Mikel all the way from Spain. He is talking about his getting back to basics, which is change, grow, and share. It's a great episode. He's been in the industry for a long time and has a lot of things to share with you guys. Then last week we released episode 2 of our mini series with Tealbook. So go and check that out. It's called Lessons Learned from Crisis. Number 2 is about staying ready. Episode number 1 was all about bad data. And episode 3 coming up this week is going to be about diversity and diverse suppliers. And you're not going to want to miss that one because that one is really, really, really cool. What else have we got going on? We've got a new supply chain minute. Last week, I recorded an episode with Greg White on his Tequila Sunrise show, which I am very excited for you guys to hear about because I talk all about what we're doing at Ships. And then, of course, we've got the Ships demos that we're doing all of this month. So if you are a forwarder or a mid-market importer and exporter and want to learn more, we're going to have the registration link in the comments today. So sign up. Want to see you on those demos so I can show you what it's all about. And I am going live twice today. That's right. I'm live here this morning for Thoughts and Coffee, and then we're going live at 1 p.m. with Procurement Foundry for the Suchi panel. And we're going to be talking all about what they're doing in supply chain, how we can make it more resilient, and what all of that looks like. So I hope that you are going to join us for that. We're going to be live on Let's Talk Supply Chain, Procurement Foundry, and I think maybe my personal page as well. So enough about that. Before I get into the question of the week, I'm going to bring up our guest for today, and his name is Daniel Barnes, all the way from across the pond. Welcome, Daniel. Thanks for joining us. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do and all the amazing things you're doing in procurement?
well, I think you're over flattering me a little bit there, but so I'm Daniel Barnes from the UK. I've been in procurement about 5 years, and recently I started putting out a lot of content, which some people might say is absolute rubbish. Some people might love it, and that's over at the World of Procurement, which is a new podcast. And I don't know, it's just a mixture of articles from the community, mainly with a procurement and contract management focus, but with some wider supply chain element. But pretty much my expertise is procurement and contract management, and I occasionally get involved with supply chain when there's no one better to do it.
Well, and I was just recently on your show.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Your episode was so easy to edit, to listen to, because you're an absolute pro when you're talking on podcasts, because you can just tell you've got it down to a T, how to communicate a message. And I fumble over my words like a million times.
Well, I felt like I did a little bit of a fumble today. Plus, I forgot we were live on our page. So I just had to pull that up because I want to make sure that we give a shout out to people on my personal page as well. So let's see. So Stefan is over on my personal page. He says good morning, but in German. And I'm not going to attempt to say that. And then yeah, John, I think it's German. Guten Morgen?
Guten Tag. I don't know.
Morgan? Anyways, Stefan, you might have to come on to tell us exactly the pronunciation for that. And John Buglino, good morning over on my personal page. We're so glad that everybody could join us. So the question of the week this week is going to be, what's a book that has had a significant impact on your life? And we are going to be doing that Wednesday morning on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So Daniel, I wanted to ask you about the book that changed your life.
Okay, I'm going to cheat slightly, and I'm going to go with two. Okay, and I'll be really quick because I've just been thinking about this. So as a child, I would. Oh, it's so hard. I'm going to go. I'm going to say the Harry. I'm just going to say Harry Potter. Harry Potter.
Yes!
It's because it's incredible. I almost said The Hobbit, but as a child, yeah, just they're my childhoods and
love
everything. Yeah, and then to flip it and go a little bit more recently, Sapiens. Sapiens was one of the best books. I've got it somewhere here. I don't know, somewhere. It's by Yuval Noah Harari. He's a Jewish professor, and it's all about a history of humankind. It's honestly one of the best books I've ever read. I've read his second book, which was Homo Deus, which is about the future. And I've got his third book, which I've not read yet, but it's on my list to read. He's a special writer. So yeah, massively recommend those books.
Awesome. Well, I think that when I tag you in this post, you can come back and let everybody know the title and the author for that book.
That's fine.
That we can all go and check that out. I think for me, everybody knows on some of my thoughts and coffee posts from previously, it's Brene Brown, daring greatly. I think she does an amazing job and, talks about how you can dare greatly and what that means to you and everything like that. So that would be a book for me. But now we're going to move on to my thoughts and coffee post from Sunday. So I don't know if everybody saw this or not, but I have been taking a course at Yale University online about the science of well-being. And I want to give a shout out to Christina, because Christina was the one that put me in touch with this course. And I immediately signed up because I wanted to know, what does make people happy? What are some of the things that maybe we think make us happy that actually don't? And what's the science behind that? And it's not very sciencey. It's actually really fun to follow along with. But one of the things that they had brought up was mind control. And they were saying that the mind wanders 46% of the day, which includes while we perform most of the tasks that we're doing on a daily basis. And it makes us unhappy. Mind wandering makes us unhappy. We start telling ourselves stories. We start making things up. And one of the ways that we can curb that and really take back control of our mind is through meditation. And I know that that's something, close to your heart, Daniel. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? And what were your thoughts when you read my post?
Yeah, I think it's great that you're doing this in the first place. I think more people need to get way more in tune with this. And it's crazy because I got into meditation sort of 5 years ago when I started working in commercial and procurement. Luckily, my employee at the time brought some guy on who was a traveler from within the UK. There's quite a big traveling community, and he had a fairly rough life. And he came on and just spoke to us like how he dealt with it, and gave us all these breathing techniques and went into loads more detail because it's not just breathing and everything. But yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking there, when you were saying about the mind wandering, I often find, like, for example, when you're talking to me, I have conflicting thoughts. Like my mind is constantly going off in 1,000,001 directions. And I think, like, in order to bring it back, like I have really good breathing technique, and I'm sure I'm going from memory. I'm sure it mentioned a breathing technique in this post, but you can just count like 1, 2, inhale, exhale, and that can almost bring you back to the moment straight away. And I find myself doing that. I don't know, probably most of the day when I'm trying to concentrate. My mind is constantly fighting against me, and I don't want it to wander because I want to, for example, in this conversation, I actually want to listen to you, and when I think about it in the workplace, I've been in meetings and I can look around the room when I've been talking or someone's been talking, everyone's mind's gone. No one is in that room, and they don't know how to bring themselves back to the moment to, it's about being that present-minded person, but it enables you to communicate better, you take in information far better, and you just excel far better. I mean, I can honestly say without getting into meditation 5 years ago, like I wouldn't be doing, and humble brag time, I wouldn't be doing as well as I'm doing, say, financially or in my career, say within procurement. because I would just constantly be having these different messages. I wouldn't be able to take in data very quickly. I wouldn't be able to give snapshots or easily digestible information to people because my mind would be a mess. So there's some thoughts there. I'll be quiet for a moment and let you talk now.
No, I think those are all great. When I first started meditating, it was a few years ago. I used an app called Headspace.
Yeah, me too.
I don't use that anymore, but it really
Same.
helped me get into the practice of, just being able to capture those thoughts and sort of move them aside. And so it really helped me get into the practice. I mean, now I can go for at least 30 minutes. One of the practice that I have just brought in is the loving kindness meditation. And I bring that up because it really makes you feel, I mean, in a time of the pandemic and some people are still self-isolating, it really makes you feel connected to people because the loving kindness meditation, and I actually use one that walks me through it. As that you visualize people in your life and you're sending them loving kindness. You're also sending yourself loving kindness. And so that's a really important one if we want to stay connected with people, especially right now. And then the other one is just to take note, right? Like you do a head to toe kind of count of, what every part of your body is kind of feeling and staying present in the moment with that feeling. I hold a lot of my feelings in my throat. So I spend a lot of time, without judgment, just sitting there with the feelings that are in my throat just to get through some of those. So I'm not feeling that on a constant basis. But yeah, they were saying that, mind practice can curb the mind wandering, which obviously makes us unhappy, which is what they said. It can affect cognitive performance for the better. It increases feelings of love and kindness, and it increases social connection, which I just think is super important and something that I wanted to put out in the world. And just to say, hey, just a gentle reminder, let's take control back of our mind and make it work for us in the positive as we're going through all of this uncertainty with everything that's going on. And so I just encourage everybody to, really take a look at that and see if you can just even put 5 minutes into your life. I'm not really good at it during the day. So there are some moments when I really need to take a moment and maybe do a little bit of a meditation, and I need to get better at that. But, doing it in the evening with my gratitude journal really helps to calm the mind for the evening and getting you set for the next day.
Yeah, I love that. That head to toe one, by the way. I found that crazy how when I've done that and I still do it, suddenly I notice so many pains in my body. Like if I've been working out, suddenly like I realize like I'm so achy in my shoulders or my back is aching. One thing I find is that I'm one of those where I will put my tongue onto the upper part of my mouth. Like I just realized I was doing it then. And that is a very common thing for when you are not necessarily are stressed or your mind is wandering, but it can lead to that. And so many people are listening. You may even be finding it now. You may notice your tongue naturally just goes to the top of your mouth when you're listening or concentrating. It's actually really bad. And I really can't remember the science behind it, but there is something to say that when you relax, everything else relaxes as well. And that was a really weird one for me that I noticed when I do the head to toe sort of checking in. And like when you're considering meditation throughout the day, you can sit down and do it for 5, 10, however many minutes you want. You don't need long to do it to make it a habit. And one thing I used to do when I was an actual employee or when I've gone into like clients, if I finished a bit of work and I feel like I've got a spare few minutes, I'll run outside, sometimes literally, I'll get outside as fast as I can, just sprint out. And I'll just walk around the building and I will do a walk-in meditation, which is just breathing in, breathing out, counting the breath, like from 1 to 4. And that just resets me. I come back in and smash out some more work. And it just upped my productivity, went through the roof doing that.
I love that.
It's great.
Just a shout out on my personal LinkedIn page. Nindya says the power of your subconscious mind, exactly what we're talking about. Daniel is over there and he is across the pond as well. So thanks for joining us. Lance Johnson, too. So now it's time to get into our supply chain topics, and we've got a lot to talk about. So this first article is about AR and VR in the supply chain, and it was sent to me the other day by Julie Smithson, who's a good friend of mine, and I thought it was a great article to start off with because we're talking a lot about tech. Nobody really is. I mean, everybody's sort of taking a look at what tech is out there and what they can do for their supply chains as everybody is taking a look at different strategies. They're pulling, the tech off the back shelf and bringing it to the forefront of the conversations. And so I thought this was an interesting article to talk about because they go through the current state of AR and VR in the supply chain. What does it look like right now? What is it going to be used for? Like, what are the applications? And some of those are order picking and warehousing, predictive modeling for the internal supply chain loop, and secure and efficient delivery. And then it goes into the future. What does it look like and how can we use it in the future? What did you think when you read this article?
I loved it. And so I've been a massive advocate of AR and VR. At one point, I was going to get my VR headset, but I had to sell all my rig when my first child came along. Not that I'm bitter about that, but I sold my computer rig. That dream went down the pan. But I had a child, so that was a good thing. But one thing I'm trying to remember the language in this article. Is it an AR token? It's something like a physical sticker, effectively, that they slap onto to goods. And it collects data along its routes from sort of shipping to delivery. And the way I look at AR is it's the data element. And AR is probably going to be way more widely used for everyday people in as of when the technology grows, because like it gives very good data inputs, outputs. It allows you to track so much. You can see it working with crazy amounts of technology like blockchain and various amounts of other crazy things that are going on in the world of technology at the moment. And I just thought it was awesome. I think there was one point on the inventory management about how they can like model everything. They can model. Yes. It blew my mind. And I also think it tied in with the I can't remember if it was the VR element on that one, or whether it's purely AR. But just working out how you can do like stock taking and things without like any manual process, just because you've got the right data at the right place at the right time. I think that saves so much time, so much money. It's unreal.
Yeah. So in the inventory management section, it talks about a 95% improvement, both in cost and in time efficiency, remote collaboration in data visualization. And so that one huge for me, right? Because the future of business is collaboration. I mean, I that's what I always say. But if we can use technology to be able to help us do that, even better. And then they're also talking about VR training for employees. So what we've been going through. Yeah. I mean, what we've been going through in the pandemic, like how do you train your employees remotely? How do you take on new employees? And so I think this is going to be a tool that you're going to be able to use in the future to really train. It says there was a case study by Deloitte. So I encourage everybody to go and take a look at this article. We do have the article in the comments. It's a great article if you're looking at AR and VR in supply chain, but we've got a lot to talk about and only 12 minutes left. So we are going to move on to the next two, because these two articles that we found were pretty much the same thing. But they have a different take on it. And so we want you to be able to read both articles. And so we're going to talk about both right now. So the first one is in Taiwan Today, and it talks about how Taiwan, the European Union, Japan, and US staged a supply chain restructuring forum. Now, this is really interesting because now we're getting political. Supply chains, I mean, I think it was last week I was talking about how supply chains are getting political because there's some political stress on companies to bring manufacturing back onshore. And this one is really talking about how they're all coming together, and they're going to be encouraging partners and countries to bring supply chains home or relocate to friendly economies that are creating new networks based on shared values. So, but it also says free from political coercion. So it's kind of contradictory, and I'd like to see how this goes. But what did you think of this article, Daniel?
I thought it was brilliant. I mean, it's always interesting for me as well to see when the EU cooperates with the US. Not that it's a bad relationship. To me, being in a nation that is, well, for a few months anyway, still in the EU,
Yeah.
there's always some healthy tension there with the whole imports and exports as well, with tariffs and all sorts of other things like whiskies and all, the best kind of goods. But to me, I mean, yeah, just whiskey, single malt whiskey. That's kind of the only thing I find interesting about the tensions. But one thing, it kind of just to me, and it kind of I get the theme in the next article as well, is it's all kind of trying to move away from China. Like China's the big bad country at the moment. Everyone's blaming them for COVID. Everyone doesn't like their working practices. Taiwan, obviously, beautifully placed because of the tensions there. China considers Taiwan to be China. Taiwan considers China to be part of China, but Taiwan isn't China at the moment. It's all weird and wonderful. So it's full of political coercion and tensions. So that's that contradiction there. I think it's brilliant. I think some of the things they're talking about in there make sense, like building these better networks of supply chains to friendly economies, maybe, or to make new partnerships makes sense to me. But it's funny how it's phrased here.
Yeah. And this is the second article that was in the Taipei Times that talks about this restructuring forum. I think you said it mentioned Tesla. I didn't see it, but in this article, they're actually talking about 5G.
Yeah, talking about Huawei. I think that's how you pronunciate it, which is obviously a very a lot of issues. Yeah, it's so many issues with that company from the US and the UK. Everyone's banning them from their 5G networks, but effectively China is the market leader on 5G. So it's weird and wonderful, this.
Well, and I also think that it's probably a good partnership because what they say in this article is that Taiwan is on the front line of cyber defense.
Yeah.
And, that is definitely something that's not talked enough about in general, let alone in supply chains, because supply chains really can cripple a company, whether they're, if they're not working well or you can't get supply. If your first mile is not working very well, then, the rest of your company is in jeopardy. And we've seen that with COVID, right? So we're all going back to work. And if somebody comes back potentially sick, it can cripple a company. And that's, anybody from warehousing to in the office. And so it's really affecting everybody. And I know that's kind of far-fetched from the cyber defense thing, but I also think that that's something else that we also need to consider when we're looking at supply chains and we're looking at protecting our supply chains is through cyber defense and cyber security as well. It's so important because it can cripple an organization.
Yeah, I just on that point, I know we haven't got a huge amount of time. I'm pretty sure when you've got all the, and I'm probably going to get the terminology wrong here, and this is why I'm a procurement person, not a supply chain person. But let's put it in layman terms. When all of the frozen goods and everything are shipped over on those big old boats, they are effectively just controlled by nodes that talk to a computer system. No one actually really knows where they are manually. But if that network gets disrupted by a cyber attack, you're pretty much not going to know where any of your vessels are on any of the oceans that they're currently on. So how do you then plan for ships coming in to, is it to berth, to port? I don't know.
They
at the right time. Yeah, they berth. I think that's right. But there's a whole system to make sure that they're not wasting fuel, not wasting money, that they get there at the right time, that your bananas are fresh the moment you get in, so that they're great in the shop and when you get them home. But if that network gets disrupted by a cyber attack and there's no manual knowledge of it, you suddenly are missing a lot of bananas and a lot of boats. I know it's a slightly silly example.
That is a tragedy. I mean, forget toilet paper. We need bananas.
Bananas, yeah, definitely.
And especially with all of the autonomous technology that's coming in as well. I mean,
Yeah.
this has got to be a huge topic, especially in supply chain. And we've got to talk more about it. So for our last article, I threw this one out there. So we're talking, I think, mostly about tech today, which is great because it's right up your alley, Daniel. This one I thought was interesting because they were talking about how German manufacturers are pushing for rapid adoption of service integration and management, which is what SIAM stands for, if you don't know what that means, and IT service management, ITSM solutions. And so the reason why I thought this was interesting is because it's coming from the top down rather than the bottom up. As far as the technology solutions and what they're looking to use in their supply chains and when they're working with other companies on the downstream.
Yeah, I really I mean I took like a slightly different perspective from it, and that's because I don't necessarily think like a supply chain person most of the time. And what I got from this was really exciting is within so many organizations you have so many legacy applications, or you just have a ton of different applications doing all sorts of things like tracking shipping, tracking deliveries, tracking payments, I don't know, loads of different stuff. And this technology effectively gives you a single user interface where you can see all of this in one place. And I think the switch to having only one interface, so effectively one screen that does everything, makes sense rather than having various different portals or applications to get on with your work, to get data, because that's not efficient. There's loads of gaps. And to be honest, most businesses operate currently with a multitude of different systems and applications in place, and it's a nightmare for the general worker, the office workers, data analysts, procurement people, supply chain people. It's just a nightmare. So I kind of got excited from that perspective. But I agreed, like the top down approach is great to see innovation coming from the top down rather than the bottom up, and then people playing catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I am just looking at the conversation that's going on over at my personal LinkedIn page. I don't know if you guys want to go check it out, but there's a lot of great fun being had over there as well. So Daniel, any final thoughts for this week for our community and for our listeners and our audience? What's going on in procurement?
Yeah, so it's interesting in procurement at the moment. I think if I'm going to take a very UK centric approach here, and I think it's pertinent to most people to some extent. But everyone's considering COVID at the moment. But in 3 months, 4 months, the UK is going to leave the European Union. Brexit is absolute nightmare. There's new legislation getting pushed through that is effectively breaching international law at the moment. It's an absolute mess. But more importantly is people's contracts that they have in place with their supply chain. If you don't have your supply chain, if you don't have a visible supply chain, if you don't know where all of your suppliers are based, if you don't know how they're bringing goods or components or parts to your final product, you're going to have a tough ride. And if your contract terms don't have the right terms for payment, for delivery, for passing a risk, it's going to be a nightmare next year. And I think COVID's derailed a lot of this. So that's something I think a lot of businesses probably need to play catch up on really quick.
Daniel, Zahid has a question for you. What are the most demanded skills needed for procurement professionals right now?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think I almost think it's not even the technical skills at the moment. And I have been talking to a lot of people. I think it's not necessarily the EQ side of things, but it's the willingness and the ability to change rapidly. And whether that means new technologies, new processes, new directions, but being someone who can change very quickly. If you know the actual technical stuff and you're a good operator, it's an easy marketplace for you at the moment.
Yeah. And get buy-in. I think the biggest part of change management is buy-in. Somebody said that on a LinkedIn comment the other day, which I thought was huge. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the biggest part of change management, right? We've got to understand what everybody's going through, and we've got to figure out how we can all come together to make that change happen. Well, Daniel, this has been amazing. I'm so glad that you joined us on Thoughts and Coffee. Make sure that you guys go check out the World of Procurement, especially the podcast and the episode that I just did, because I loved being on your show. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Love doing Thoughts and Coffee with you guys. Love all your comments, and have a great week. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure being on here.
Thanks, Daniel.